You guys are going to absolutely love Bryan Politte. He is a consummate artist, an absolute genius when it comes to illustration, pretty much self-taught after graduating as a visual effects artist. You're going to love what he has to say about motivation and about working through it. So welcome to Creative Ethos. I'm Ben Ortiz, and here's Bryan. Bryan, so you started off as a visual effects artist, and then you transitioned into illustration. Let us know like how that was.
Uh, well, it's been like since I graduated from school, and then I got a job working at a medical animation studio in Minnesota. I was there for about 2.5 years, got let go, and then I decided from that point on that it wasn't really for me to work in that type of field, because medical animation really wasn't really challenging me in a way that I really felt like would improve on my artistic abilities. There were other challenges that I felt like were necessary for the growth of being able to meet deadlines and, the basic studio type workflows and everything like that. But as far as like trying to improve on any sort of artistic talents that I had been developing up until that point, it really wasn't doing that for me. And I knew that my strengths were really in my illustrative capabilities. And I really wanted to, from that point on, make that a goal of mine. So every day after being let go, I just kept drawing every day and just improving and making improvements on that. No matter what crappy little job I had to get, I wanted to keep drawing in between, because I knew that if I got to a professional level where there's no deniability in the work itself, I just had to keep making those efforts. And, I knew that it would pay off. And I feel like now I'm at the point where I can pretty much draw whatever I want to draw. And even though there's other challenges and within the skill sets and things like that, I do still love to draw from life and everything like that. But I feel like now I have the ability to create compositions that I really like. I'm able to I create my own workflows that work with the type of art style that I like. And of course I have all my influences and everything like that, but those aren't necessarily always in the back of my mind. Those are kind of like, I would say those are more or less like kind of second nature now,
Yeah. Yeah. They're a part of you, right?
Right.
Because like you've done the work, you've studied them so much, and now what's coming through into your work is your own. But the
Right.
influences are still there in the background. If you need to pull anything out, then you have that, that library
Mm-hmm.
of influences that you can go to. So now going back to what you said earlier, so working, doing animation, that kind of stuff, that was, obviously your passion, your love lies in illustration in this kind of work. It- was that kind of like a hindrance to you? Did you see it as that? Or was it more of a, corporate atmosphere was not for you, you wanted to work for yourself kind of a thing?
Kind of both. I felt like I didn't mind the corporate atmosphere as much at the time, because I felt like I made it. Like when you
Yeah.
get into that type of position, you're like straight out of school. You're like, man, I can't believe I'm here. I'm doing it, and I felt real proud of it, of that ability to be able to get a job right out of school, and I was really grateful for it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But along comes the inevitable deadlines and a lot of the stress that comes along with that. And I've gone through a lot of mental health issues as a result of that. But
Right.
that can also become an unforeseen part of the journey of, of a artist's life.
Exactly. And that's the thing, right? It's like as a creative, it's like we're constantly fighting against the world around us wants us to do certain things a certain way. And then we have a vision that we want to present to the world. And so it's like balancing those two things could sometimes be, really difficult. Speaking on that, it's like every artist has a unique journey, right?
Right.
So what's Brian Politte's origin story? Like, how did you discover your passion for illustration?
Oh,
Where
I
did
was
you
real
start?
little, real little. My dad was actually the one that was like drawing with me when I was a little kid originally, and I would really just draw a lot of my toys. I had little action figures I would draw. I draw a lot of dinosaurs, things like that, comic books. Comic books really accelerated kind of my interest in certain types of art growing up. For sure, I really loved getting into doing like aliens and things like that. And of course, movies that came along, I would always try to draw like the cover of like, I would find myself drawing like the cereal box. Like I remember Batman Forever when that came out, I was drawing like the portraits of the characters on the cereal box because they'd have like special cereal boxes for the movies. And I would draw those, or whatever I could find out of a magazine, things like that. Um, so it was a lot of random stuff that I would just like kind of take interest in, but you know, growing up in the 80s and 90s, you kind of, what else are you gonna do? You didn't have the internet to look at to for that kind of reference. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, as a kid, you've got to find it where you can get it, right? And the fact that you had that impulse to actually, uh, and the foresight, like, hey, I want to do this. No one else is drawing from life, when they're a kid, right? And
right,
that's what you're doing. And so it's like,
yeah,
but to take that and then jump to now where you're doing what is it, Kingdom Coffee, right? Like you're doing their
yeah,
illustrations, and that to me was wild because I know you as a digital guy, and so to
yeah,
see, it's like traditional illustration, that was a mind blower. And I was actually, I mean, your
yeah.
the work is beautiful. We're showing it right now. Yeah, so if you could speak on that for a little bit.
So yeah, the Kingdom Coffee thing kind of came about because I also have another personal project that I've been working on that I haven't not really know. I don't know if I really want to release too much about it at the moment, but I'm doing a children's book. And while I was working on one of the pages, I normally go to this Kingdom Coffee to work. A lot of times it's in the afternoons or even in the mornings, depending on what my schedule was at the time. I think I was working on the afternoons. And it was in the fall this last year when I got approached by the owner, and she came up to me and asking me if I'd be interested in working on some illustrations or some graphic design work for her company. I'd be like, yes, of course, that'd be awesome. I had no idea what I was getting into, and I didn't know what she was going for as far as the graphic design. I didn't know if it was going to be this real clean, kind of Starbucksy look. She just wanted an illustrator, really. She really just wanted someone that could draw something really fun and give it some life, maybe. That's what I think was really cool about it.
Yeah, and did she see? Okay, because your work, like you're very sci-fi oriented. Like you've got that side going, but you also right, but you
Yeah.
also have like your realistic animal illustrations that are amazing, like they're mind blowing. So what was it that you were working on at that moment that she saw that told her, hey, hire this guy?
That's a good question. I don't remember exactly what the page was. I think it was like a character page, but it was like really detailed. I think I was really far along in it. But yeah, I was just working on a page, and I've been going there a lot, and I think I think it's nice to have that type of recognition. I wasn't expecting it. I think I really just like working in that type of atmosphere. It's just easier for me to, sit down, have a coffee, and just kind of work through stuff.
So in terms of your creative process, is that part of it? Like you rather find like a quiet space, outside, outdoors, that kind of thing where you're surrounded, because you're still surrounded by people, right?
Right.
It's not like, as if you're
Right.
like in your apartment or in your room or whatever, just like, sequestered away. You're out in the world, drawing and, doing that kind of stuff in front of others. What, um, like when you're working that way, like what are you working on? Is it your iPad? Is it your regular pad? Are you using, real media, digital? Like what's your process?
It depends on what I'm working on. If it's for like a client, a lot of times in the very beginning process, I'm working on real media. So I'll like have a sketch pad. And that's the easiest way for me to get started on anything, is to sketch it out on a tiny sketch pad, thumbnail size images. I'm not trying to have refined work right away, and that's how I think of digital now. I think of it in terms of that's another part of the pipeline. At least for me, I don't start off digitally. Some people can, they feel real comfortable working in the digital space right away. For me, I'd prefer to start on paper. I feel like I flow through my ideas much quicker that way, and I'm committing to whatever it is I'm putting on paper a lot more than say digital, where I feel like I have like one little space. Some people are really good about like organizing their thumbnails and stuff on the same like pad, but for me, it kind of takes me out of it. And so I feel like if I'm working in like a sketch pad, it's easier for me to get my ideas out. I can flip the page if I don't like it, or I can cross it off, can rip it up, throw it in the garbage if I don't like it, but a lot of times I'll start off, doing little thumbnail sketches. And then if I really like the thumbnail sketch, if I got like a composition I like, I'll take a photo of it, send it to my iPad, and then work from there. And a lot of times that's how I get started. Like with the Kingdom Coffee stuff, I came up with like a thumbnail I really liked. I took a photo of it, sent it to my iPad, started working over the top of that. And that actually helped me in the process a lot quicker. It was a more direct workflow from paper to digital, where I didn't have to then work digital sketches. I had just used whatever sketch worked and worked directly on top of that. And then I discovered not only Procreate was really good in the beginning, I realized that working in Fresco was better for graphic design illustration. So they have it actually an Illustrator iPad version that you can go directly from Fresco to there, and that just kills it. That kills the game right there. So it's a game
Nice.
changer for sure. It's pretty nice.
So are you working a lot vector wise, like in Illustrator now? Because I know you as a uh, not so much Photoshop, but definitely Procreate guy.
Yeah, yeah. Procreate not as much anymore, just because of now. If I was doing just like a general like drawing, I would just use Procreate because it's a little better for that in terms of looseness and just breaking down, the real bare minimum like tools you need for drawing. I like Procreate a little better for that. But as far as like what I was doing before is I was taking my Procreate drawings and trying to convert them in Illustrator on my desktop, which took a long time to refine it right, and it never really turned out the way I wanted it. So that's why I felt the need to do it in Fresco for vector. But as far as general illustration, like if you're just doing a digital painting, I'd rather do it in Procreate.
Very nice. And could you share an obstacle that you've had in your career so far that you overcame?
I think just being able to get a book started was an obstacle in itself, because I'm not a writer. I never even thought of myself as that, but I wanted to write a children's book, and I'm like, well, I got to start somewhere, and I would like kind of research and see what do children's books have in them that, I mean, how are they written? Because I haven't looked at one since I was a kid. Of course, the illustration part of it, that is a little easier for me, but the actual writing part of it, that was a part where I was like, well, you got to simplify it enough so that the kid understands it, but not complicated, where they're going to be like struggling to understand what certain words are. So you had to find I wanted to find somewhere in between, so that if the parents read to the kid, I wanted to encourage that actually with this book, because it wasn't going to be just one-liners. It was going to have like a few sentences per page.
A more fleshed out story as opposed to, uh, like a golden book from back in the day, right?
That's correct. Yeah. I wanted it to feel more or less like, not necessarily fairy tale style, but it was going to be, I wanted it to have like a moral backbone to it. Whereas the main character has his goals and ambitions are directed around helping others, and he also loves exploring and discovering new things. And I wanted that to be part of his story going forward. But I wanted it's technically kind of an origin story for the characters, so I wanted it to have from like kind of birth to his kind of career, so to speak. You'll find out in the story, but it almost kind of feels like they're making books to be pretty, but with less substance, story
Right.
wise.
Well, I mean, it's easier to digest, right? It's easier
Right.
to it's easier to sell if it's just pretty, but it has nothing to it.
I wanted something that adults will also be interested in. Yeah,
That makes like, complete sense. Is this going to be a series? Do you see it as a series or do you see it as a
I
one-off?
do. I do see it as serious, because I was really excited. That was the other thing, is I really wanted it to be exciting enough for it to continue on. And it was exciting enough for me to continue on with this character, because it's kind of like, because it is a sci-fi character, it's a sci-fi alien character, not to give too much away, but I wanted it to have that galaxy far, far away feel to it, where
Yeah.
you can still it's so disconnected from humanity that but there's also a relatable sense about the character that you have. um but I wanted it to be adventurous in itself and kind of spark imagination, and kind of like how when we were kids, what, just just a fun story, to
Yeah, you're trying to
explore.
recapture that feeling that you had when you were a kid and you were seeing like all these things that were, I mean, because back in the 80s and 90s, what did we have? We have, Star Wars. We had all those kinds of things that just like kind of, you look at it and you're instantly taken back there, right?
Right.
Would you say that this is one of your favorite projects, or is there anything else
Absolutely.
that, you're really into right now? Okay, cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is my favorite project I've ever done. It's the most I've put into any project. I started it the fall of 2022, this particular book. And I originally wanted to do another book before, a children's book, prior to the pandemic. And I did a couple preliminary pages or whatever. There are actually a couple of those pages are on my website, but I have, since I had originally was going to be about like this monster character, and I thought the art turned out really well for it, but I had no story, and I didn't know where I was going to take the character. It didn't feel like it had enough world built around it. I could make it up as I go, and that's kind of what I was doing, is making it up as I go. But with this one, I wanted there to be more of a universe surrounding the character that he could like build off of, that could spark new adventures here and there. You can pretty much go anywhere with the character, and that's kind of what I was hoping with it.
So in terms of, because I mean, your journey is kind of interesting because it went from, this animation background, this VFX background, and you're back to kind of traditional, back to,
Right.
analog, that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And it's like, do you have any kind of advice for anyone, who may have a similar path to you, like any aspiring artists or anything like that?
Yeah. I feel like
Any
it's,
lessons that you've learned? Any lessons that you'd like to tell them?
oh man, everybody's journey is so different depending on their living circumstances. Like, it's, I think then the underlying thing is like, don't give up, kind of just keep pushing forward. It's going to be hard. It's not easy trying to carve your own path. And it may not even, I'm not saying it's going to work out, but I have enough faith in it working out that I'm willing to keep going with it. But I feel like if you just keep pushing forward, you know where your strengths lie, you know where you need to work on things. Just keep working on those things and it'll come to you. It's just, you got to have all patience is a huge thing. Being patient also is helps you keep moving forward because you lose patience after a while with certain things. Like it's not work. It's no matter how much I work on this, it's not happening or this or that. Just keep doing it. I think it's just at some point it'll click. And I think that's where a lot of artists find themselves is like the repetitive nature of some things can be arduous and you may not see the light at the end of the tunnel right away, but there's hope. There's hope in it. Just keep moving forward, I guess.
Instead of just waiting for motivation or for whatever, it's just
Right.
about work because the work is what's
Yeah.
going to bring you to the next thing, right?
Right.
Nice. So the breakthroughs come through work. Cool.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I feel the same way. Like honestly, I used to wait for, inspiration to hit me and,
Right.
all that, but it makes no damn sense because it's like if you're looking to create something, that's not going to happen by just wishing and hoping. It's going to happen through
Right.
actually sitting down and doing the work, you
Right.
know.
The inspiration still comes though. 'Cause the more work you put into it, the better your skills get. The inspiration will naturally come because you feel like you can tackle that. The inspiration is going to be more uh, reinforced by your skill set.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a perfect way to put it. Your inspiration is going to be reinforced by your skill set. That is a perfect place to end it. Brian, thank you so much. Really,
Oh,
really, really
no, thank
appreciate
you. It
it.
was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm loving the work. It's absolutely fantastic. And yeah, you're our first guest. How crazy is that?
It's awesome. You could put the pictures in
Thanks,
front of
man.
where my face is. You don't need to, nobody needs to see me.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
we'll
No.
do that. No, man. Thank you so much. All right.
Absolutely.
See you, Brian.
Let's see it.
Cool.